Now. Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Samus, the founder and CEO of Solveres. Solveres means solutions in Latin, and that's what we're all about. We're a membership with benefits. We bring more value to your existing life, more value to your existing business, and there's also an opportunity here to have your own business with a team that is unbelievable. There's 10 officers. They're all CEOs in their own right. We have 100 years of experience in business, and we're here to help every step of the way, and just genuine. We're all spiritual, family-based people, and it's about making a difference while we make money at the same time. So it's really kind of fun. With that, the format is usually we just share a little bit, network a little bit, maybe put our contact information in the chat room. But on Thursdays for the next 9 weeks, we're going to have something a little different. And it's a real treat. I've gotten to know this person. He's a vice president, and he's also a co-owner. He's authored 4 books. His TED Talk on the 7 Daily Acts of Courage is on our website. It's a must listen to. And with that, what's really neat is he kind of intertwines his own personal stuff into his experience. I know Fortune 100 companies pay him $10,000 to fly in for a seminar, individual basis. He charges $900 for 20 minutes. We are blessed with what's about to happen here. I've heard a lot of the big speakers, big names all over the country, and I don't know, to me, Dusty's the top. So with that, Dusty Staub, please take over.
Thank you, Mark. It's all downhill from there. I would say I've been working with people since I was getting paid to help people since I was 22. I'm 72 now, so that makes 50 years of working with folks. And I'll jump into my interest was in human psychology. What made people effective? How do people work together in teams? What made for healthy organizations? Why did organizations fail? Why did really smart leaders fail? Chris Argyris at Yale University, PhD, studies why really smart, highly successful people reach a certain point in their career and they fail utterly. They're miserable, they're unhappy. I was really kind of curious about that. And so one of my colleagues, a friend of mine, we've been friends for 50 years, Wayne Gerber, and I wrote a little book called Dynamic Focus, Creating Significance and Breaking the Spells of Limitation. This was my 3rd book, my first co-authored book. And in that book, we were exploring, why is change so difficult? How do you go through change in a most effective way? And what gets in the way of being able to have greater joy, greater sense of love, a real sense of living a deeper and more meaningful life? And a lot of the stuff that I see out there is about how to make more money, how to be more successful, but it doesn't talk about being more significant. It doesn't talk about how you love more deeply, how you can be more at peace with yourself, more joyful. It doesn't talk about that. One of the CEOs I work with has created 9 businesses, and he had me officiate at his wedding. So I'm also an ordained minister, and he had me officiate at his wedding. And that night before, at the rehearsal dinner, he had all of his family, all of her family. My wife and I were there. He flew us up to his big ranch out west in Montana. And we're sitting there, and he goes around and introduces everybody, speaking from his heart. He gets to me and he says, I want to introduce Dusty. He's my coach. He's been a mentor for me. He said, I made hundreds of millions of dollars, but until I met and worked with Dusty, I didn't know what joy was. And I wouldn't be with this woman here if I hadn't done that work, because I wouldn't have been open and she wouldn't have had anything to do with me. That was one of the highest bits of praise I ever got. And for me, what it is about breaking spells. Now, in cognitive psychology, in the neurosciences, they talk about cognitive patterns, patterns of thinking, ways of looking at the world that can limit us. So in this book, the first chapter is about, are you living a spellbound life? And I'll just read to you, how do you know if you're living a spellbound life? Well, you regularly feel exhausted or out of sorts. You realize you've become resistant to change. You keep experiencing results that are the opposite of what you wanted. You find yourself making excuses for your own underperformance. Your self-esteem falls. You say things like, yes, but. You can't say no. You can't seem to please anybody. Your people around you are unhappy. You feel trapped by your own conflicting thoughts. You see others as being against you. You feel like you're the only champion for what is right. You're out of sync with your teammates. You just don't feel like you're out of sorts with life. Spell-based thinking is any time a cognitive pattern, a way of thinking, governs your perception so that you're seeing things in a certain way and behaving in a certain way. I'll give you an example. An executive I was working with, he learned very early on that if someone gigs you, gig them back. If they gig you again, gig them back twice as hard. So eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. As Gandhi said, the world will end up blind and toothless. And he was driving people away. Yeah, he was making millions of dollars, but he was leaving tens of millions of dollars on the table. He was on his fourth marriage, so he wasn't being very successful there. He wasn't very happy. He was drinking a lot. And I really challenged him, started asking questions. How do you know this is true? By the way, if you think you're under a spell about your looking at your mate, looking at your job, looking at your life, and it's making you feel bad, ask yourself the question, be curious. One of the ways to break a spell is be curious and go, how do I know that's so? How would I know if that was objectively so? If I were to go out and ask the wisest person I know, the person with the greatest love, and I were to tell them this story, what would they see that's different than the way I'm seeing it? So I began asking him questions. How do you know that's so? How do you know that's so? I said, when somebody gigs you, how do you feel? We talked about it. And then if they gig you even harder, how do you feel? And we talked about it. And I'm eclipsing this. This is a period of weeks. He finally got it. So the next time somebody came at him, he said, tell me more. And when did I make, tell me more. And how often have I done that? And how does it make you feel? And what are the thoughts you have when you're feeling that way? And what would you rather I do? We had a series of questions. I had him follow a logical question of like 7 questions before he could respond. And he said, you know what? The person appreciated me afterwards. And I didn't feel so upset. So he stopped having a revolving door in his senior leadership team. He broke a spell. If you have something in your life that is causing you not to feel the awe and the joy of being alive, you're probably suffering from a spell, because this is a magical, mysterious, incredible world we live in, gang. And what's possible is so immense. And the only thing that gets in our way is our perception. Change your way of thinking, you change your life. Change your perception, and you change your life. So a spell. What are some of the spells? Well, personal spells are, I'm not good enough. I can't win. I can't be myself. I have to please them. My personal spells growing up was, I'm not good enough. And I was living in resistance to that. I talk about that in my TED Talk. But there are also business and organizational spells. If it's good for business, it's good. Not necessarily. If hierarchy is good, the person at the top has got to be the smartest person, right? The position defines the person. How about another spell that we have culturally? How much money you have defines your true worth, right? There are spells that says religion is the ultimate answer. Another spell is religion and science are incompatible. That's a spell, not true. In fact, the mystics and the spiritualists sound more and more like the folks that are doing quantum physics today. They all sound like they're raving mystics at the moment in terms of this world. So Julian Jaynes, the great British astrophysicist, says the universe looks less and less like a great machine and more like a great thought. And we talk about nothing, matter is not really real. It's all quanta of information and vibrational patterns that condense into what we perceive as real matter. And then nothing is truly set. It's all waves of possibility that do not coalesce until we look at it. I mean, this sounds like raving mystics to me, speaking 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. There are spells in our society. There are spells. Racism is a spell. Sexism is a spell. Ageism is a spell. Anything that makes someone less than you is a spell. Every time we go into judgment, we're in a spell. Every time we want to blame somebody, we're in a spell. Every time we're beating ourselves up, we're in a spell. So recognizing that spells exist, there are cognitive patterns that we've been trained into, that whole cultures have, societies have, individuals have, families have, right? The spell I had from my father, who was a paratrooper, 82nd Airborne, 101st, 18 Airborne Corps, 26 years, 2 wars, was you got to be strong or you're nothing. That's a spell. You got to be right, never be wrong. That's a spell. One of my colleagues, when I was a young therapist, one day said to me, because I was following the spell, said, Dusty, the few of us that actually like you, we like you in spite of all your efforts to get us to like you by showing us how smart you are. That was a spell breaking. It's called a double bind in psychotherapy, but it's a way of breaking the spell, getting somebody to look at things in a very different way. Whenever we help our friends, our family, our loved ones see things in a new way, we're breaking a spell. Whenever we see things in a new way, we're breaking a spell. I want to see, I don't know if I can share my screen. I want to see if I can share a little cartoon with you. Nope, can't show it to you. But all right, man.
Actually, hold on, Dusty. I'm going to make you co-host. No, Bo, you're the host now. Make Dusty co-host. I'd like to see what he has there.
See if I can share it. Nope, can't. Okay, I'm now. I can. So if I can do it now.
Okay, you can.
All right, you should be able to see this cartoon here. Everybody see it?
Can. Yep.
All right, you see this first mate and the captain. They're in a hurricane. The first mate says, "Ye gods, Captain, you're right. We are in a bottle." So while it seems like that's the whole world, it's a bottle of consciousness. And what I would say, gang, is that every time we break a spell, we break a bottle of consciousness and we see a bigger world. However, keep in mind, it's just a bigger bottle. All we do every time we expand our consciousness, we get into a bigger world, it's still not the universe. No one has a patent on the great white light. No one has the mind of God. So while we can become bigger and bigger and see more and more, we've got to realize there's still far more to see. All right, I'll stop sharing, but I love that cartoon because it captures the essence. We do a 3-day program here we call Advanced Leadership, which is based on this book and what I'm sharing with you. And the first night we sit around the fire after a day-long work and have everybody go around the circle. These are senior executives, share a time when the bottle of consciousness broke open and you saw a bigger world. Sometimes it was after the first divorce. Sometimes it was after the death of a loved one. Sometimes it was after failing, having a business fall out from under them. Sometimes it was just a moment sitting at a sunset. Sometimes it was because they were taking an acid trip. The bottle broke and they saw a bigger world and they could never go back to the old bottle. The second night after work, we have them, what's the story you're going to live into? What's the bigger story you want to live into that's going to give you life, that's going to allow you to have significance and success, joy, love, happiness, fulfillment, and as much financial success as you want, because you can see and you can work with other people in a more wholehearted way. You can engage people. So when you look at consciousness and you look at understanding how the mind works, you begin to realize all my beliefs, all my assumptions, all my prejudices are really spell-based. And so if I can be curious, if I can use humor, if I can use compassion, if I can use love, if I can be suspicious every time I'm making a judgment, or I'm finding myself being really critical, myself or anybody else, if I can really move into active listening, if I can really invite challenge, if I can use rich internal dialogue, talk to the different parts of myself, the different aspects, the archetypes within me. Roberto Assagioli says we have 64 subpersonalities inside us. So whether you believe you have 1, 2, or 64, you have different resources. And rich external dialogue is talking to people who think very differently than you, who see the world very differently, because you're interested in getting outside any trapped way of thinking to see a much richer, a much fuller, and a much, much stronger world. So spell breaking, anything that helps you get out of self-limiting thinking, self-limiting beliefs, is a way of breaking a spell. So I'm doing this very, very quickly. Usually we talk a lot more and give lots of examples. I will say this, there's something called the reality funnel. We're only aware of 6% of the electromagnetic spectrum. So 94% of what's going on around you right now, you're not perceiving. You're only perceiving 6%. The brain receives about 3 to 4 billion bits of information, of which we are only able to process 15,000 bits of information. So we're only aware of this much of reality. Of that, we have all this data. And at the same time, as we're doing that, we have beliefs that help limit our thinking. So, women are emotional, right? That's a belief system. So they can't be logical. My father actually broke a spell. He said, son, men are very emotional, women are very logical. I said, Dad, that's counterintuitive. He said, son, have you ever noticed when your mother's arguing with me, she can be very emotional and she remembers everything I said and everything I did 3 years ago? He said, I can't remember what we talked about last night. And when I get real upset, I can't think. So part of the understanding is even as we say things like that, women and men are far more complex. And the non-binary world is far more complex. Some cultures recognize 7 genders. How many genders do we actually have? So I invite you to play with consciousness, play with noticing every time you're in a place where you don't feel good. And it's not because you got COVID or the flu or you're broken a leg. You're not feeling good. What are you telling yourself? Be suspicious. Is this a spell-based way of thinking that's causing me to rob myself of joy, love, light, and possibility in the moment? That's all I wanted to share tonight, Mark, with everybody briefly, and give people a chance to respond. And then what I want to do over the next Thursday nights is really unpack what we call the dynamic development cycle, which is how do you move forward, moving through change gracefully and creating greater joy, meaning in your life, as well as success to go with your significance.
So you mentioned something earlier about if you can get somebody to see things in a different way, you break the spell. It seems like there will be a lot more work in breaking a spell than just seeing it, because who knows, our belief system may have come from a teacher or a parent or different parts of our belief system. And boy, it seems like there's a lot of work to try to break a lot of those spells that we don't even, I don't think we even came up with our own belief system. It's just what we've been exposed to over the years.
Right. There's a wonderful book called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
I've read it.
And if you think about his 4 things, they're about spell breaking. The first one is, be impeccable with your word. Don't talk badly about anybody behind their back. Don't say anything behind somebody's back you wouldn't say to their face. Don't say things about yourself that you wouldn't tolerate from somebody else. Be impeccable with your word. Be mindful. The second is don't take anything personally. When someone's acting badly towards you, it's a comment on where they are. Most of the time, it's nothing to do with you. You just happen to be the recipient. So don't take things personally. Third, don't make assumptions. And fourth, just do your best. Now, we're going to make assumptions. We're going to take things personally. What it means is when I'm taking it personally, when I'm making assumptions, that's time to be suspicious. And to do my best is to go, oh, wait a minute. Could that be spell-based thinking? And it probably is. Okay. What would be a better way? What would be a more helpful thought? What would be a more loving way to respond here for myself as well as for this situation?
So I've read that book several times, The 4 Agreements. I just love it. And I live by those 4, but I forgot about them. I haven't read that book in a long time. I'm curious for you to rattle off those 4 agreements. When's the last time you looked at that book or thought about that?
Oh, about 3 or 4 years ago, I guess.
Okay. So it's been, yeah, when you're going to say 20 years, would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, anybody else? I mean, I think that going through this work over the next 9 weeks is going to be incredible. I know I have some spells, and I'm gonna dig deep here. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a takeaway? They want to share something?
Frank?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I just saw another TED Talk recently, and I haven't seen your TED Talk yet, but it was about mindsets and how mindsets really affect even placebos and all that. And it was a 15, 20-minute TED Talk, but it was it was amazing because it has to do with resetting the mind, and it just all of a sudden you get healthier, you get, wealthier, or whatever, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, mind setting, when you go to talk to anybody, setting the stage through mind setting is really important. Norman Cousins wrote a book called Anatomy of an Illness. He said after a heart attack, how someone is talked to after a heart attack, even if they're unconscious, impacts their survival rate. You've had a heart attack, you've gotten through the worst of it, you're going to be okay. Yeah. But if there's an oh, the survival rate goes down dramatically. Yep. And when you're being operated on, how the surgeons are talking while they're operating on you affects you too. They've shown that through studies. So all the energy, the conscious mind is listening to everything we're talking about.
Yep.
Thanks.
That was great. Bye.
I have a real good friend, Oli Joseph, his name, since grade school. He was in surgery last week and he died of a stroke in surgery. My age, 65. Wow. And I was thinking, gosh, I wonder if they're looking into the anesthesiologist or something that may have happened that may have caused that. And gosh, Dusty, if it could be something as simple as the surgeon is talking about it, do you believe that could be a cause?
It could. Vanessa has got her hand up. I think she wanted to say something.
Okay, good.
Hi, Dusty. Look, I always enjoy you. I miss you when you're not here. Everything that you said, it put words to what I feel. And I just want to tell you, thank you so much. I get so much out of your talks, and I'm going to be checking out your YouTube more often, but I just wanted to get on just to tell you, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you bring to the group.
Thank you, Vanessa. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks.
Yeah, and I've talked to Vanessa several times, and she touched my heart when she opened up. She was having an emotional time, and she opened up to me. I should have got her right in touch with you because I'm not capable of helping people at the degree obviously you are. But Vanessa is transparent. I just love her. Thank you, Vanessa.
And Mark, I would say this: whenever we truly listen to anybody, without trying to fix them, but just truly listen, we help them. There's something very powerful about just being listened to.
That's right. Yeah, and I read a book about listening, and I actually went to the person's seminar about it. And it was, if you are visiting with somebody and you just ask questions and you just listen, you hardly say anything. They walk away thinking, well, that was the most interesting person I've talked to. Or and when you're listening to somebody, don't be thinking in the back of your mind, not to trumpet, but to think, how can I tell them a story that's similar to this so we can kind of relate about it? Don't do that. Just listen.
Yeah. Rick, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Dusty. Everything that I hold so dear in my thought process, the way I think, one of the things that you taught me was taking 100% responsibility, like yes. 100% responsibility. And that book by Don Miguel Ruiz, when it's not about you, and when we're talking about somebody else being where they are, how do you take 100% responsibility in a moment like that?
You're 100% responsible for your way of responding or reacting. You're responsible for your way of thinking and owning that. And you may even say, if you take the Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian movement to heart, you're responsible for the whole world. So sending out love and forgiveness to the world begins to, maybe the world's a reflection of the places outside ourselves we're at war. That's kind of radical. That's an extreme set. So when you take 100% responsibility, you're not taking on other people's stuff. You're understanding their power. I'll give you a radical thought that I believe is true. Every being on this planet is a pillar of light and great power. I agree with the kahunas in Hawaii, that we have our low self, our mid self, and our high self. And the high self is, I was raised Catholic, so that's like an archangel, 18, 20 foot tall being behind us that connects us to the divine and to the universe. And if you understand that, you speak to that. My wife and I were having dinner just last week with a new couple, and the man had cancer and he is struggling to survive, and he's in his 80s, and he has an identical twin brother. And they hadn't talked because they got into a fight over the inheritance from their mother 10 years earlier. So 10 years they hadn't talked. Before that, they were really close. And the wife was saying, well, you know, you're really sick. You should make peace with your brother. This is not good. And he said, I don't need to talk to my brother. So I explained the kahuna thought, you know, low, mid, high. I said, why don't you just let your high self speak to your brother? The part of you that still loves your brother, speak to the part of your brother that still loves you, where all of this ego stuff isn't in the way. So he said, yeah, I'll try that. 3 days later, his wife called to say his brother called him the other day, told him he was sorry he hadn't talked to him, that he loved him, and he wanted to connect. And he didn't know that his twin brother was dying from cancer.
Mm.
So that's so-called magic, high self to high self, which goes beyond anything we understand in this consciousness of ego mind, is really part of when you begin to break spells. You begin to realize you have far more power. So Rick, 100%, you have this power to shift things around you when you really keep your heart open and stay open. That's radical stuff. I believe it. I know it. It's true for me in terms of my experience in life at this point.
Mhm.
I think that's it. I don't think anybody had anything else they wanted to share.
Well, tell us then next Thursday. Maybe I think you did a little bit in the beginning, but I've had a couple of people join. So you've laid the foundation for the spells. What are we going to do next Thursday?
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about spell breaking, but next Thursday I want to talk about the 5-step dynamic development cycle and how you begin to really create greater significance and success in life as you move into the life you really want to live into, and as you claim the fullness of who you are. So it'll be
Perfect.
how you do those things, and with a lot more tools laid in.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you, Dusty. All right. Well, we did take up the whole time, but I'm going to just mention briefly that we are doing some things at Solveres that are so exciting. So many people joining every day. It's really, really getting fun, and we're getting a lot of momentum. And Mike and I are going to be releasing, the team is going to be releasing some things the first of the month regarding the website that is that rebrands and simplifies. And I was going to show a little more of it tonight, but I'm not going to with a time constraint. But Saturday I will. So keep in mind, Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We'll take another half hour. We'll go through some details of exactly what to do step by step and taking people through the process. We don't try to sell or convince. Bo, this never fails. In my clothes, Bo always raises his finger.
Well, we have a few new people here, and I'd like to have them introduce themselves to the group. One is Barbara. Barbara came based on what Cammie and I have been doing, or what Cammie's been doing. So I'd like to have Barbara just say who she is to the group and introduce herself if she would, where she's at.
Barbara, what we do is just who are you, where are you, and what do you do? And go ahead and take a moment.
Well, hello. Thank you for having me. I'm actually on the East Coast, Pennsylvania, Maryland area. I'm with Commercial Real Estate, EXP, and then also work with Cammie with Real Agents of Change and charitable gifting of real estate. So that I'm very excited about the sharing of the education and opportunity there. That's about it. I'm excited and looking forward to learning more.
Great. Well, you're just the perfect person to join a group of like-minded people that want to make a difference and just connect. It's good to be part of a group. Sean, if you can unmute, I'd like Sean. I'm going to just build you up a little bit there. When I see you unmute, I'll talk about you a little bit. Sean Schaefer. Well, I have to now. He came in. I said, Sean, I'll be right here with you every step of the way. 3-way calls, whatever you need to do. He said, Mark, I'm a recruiter. I'm not going to need your help. And he's proving it. He's sponsoring people. And he said, I'm going to be sponsoring 4 people a day. And then I see you, Dan, in the car. I think you just sponsored a new person. I got to know Patrick today. Wasn't Patrick somebody you sponsored?
I didn't hear the last part. I'm sorry, the sponsor part.
Patrick, isn't that the gentleman you just brought on board?
I did bring one on board. Yes, it was not Patrick. It was from Pentos.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. But anyway, and then Bo, go ahead.
It's Prema Yoga. So it's Prema.
Yeah.
Okay. Prema Yoga. Okay.
Patrick, I think, was recruited by Sean, and then the other guy I'd like to introduce and say a couple things is he just joined us 24 hours ago. Is James Wooten. James, you want to unmute yourself and say where you're at and what you do and give us a little bio of you?
Thank you. Yeah, Jim Wooten. I know it says James, but I go by Jim. So I'm a real estate broker in Columbus, Ohio. I've been doing commercial real estate for about 40 years. And the last 25 years, I've specialized in church brokerage and doing bargain sales with partial gifts of real estate every time that I can. And I've done quite a few dozens of them. And I've written a book about it, real estate gift. And but I'm now doing the other side of it with Cammie and Barbara to get 100% gift of the real estate for charities of all kinds. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm working on it. And I love the Solveres concept and operation, and excited about getting more of my real estate friends involved to work with me on it. So thank you. For
James is also a life insurance salesman too. So he's got his license and he's very interested in that part with Bruce.
Yep.
Oh, hey, Jim, have you talked to Bruce already?
I reached out to him waiting for a call back, but
Okay.
I'm very interested to see everything that's possible there. And we're right next door to each other. I'm in Ohio, he's in Pennsylvania, and looking forward to collaborating with Bruce.
Excellent. Speaking of right next door to each other, Barbara, you said you're right next to Maryland. Have you ever gone to Inner Bay, that really neat area where the old ships are in Inner Bay? Have you heard of Inner Bay?
Inner Harbor in Baltimore.
Inner Harbor, thank you. I call it Inner Bay. Yeah, I've been there a few times. I just loved it. Just really loved it.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Well, Cammie's making a difference. She's not only bringing a team in, but she's setting up to help one of our own here. We will start November 1st. And I'm just so excited to have her as part of the team. Cammie, would you like to say hello?
Well, thank you, Mark. I know we're running on late this evening, but I am the author of the book behind me there. Real Estate is Hot, Fundraising is Not. We are partnering real estate and nonprofit and looking to fund nonprofits, but we're also looking to help businesses be socially responsible. You know, 87% of your marketplace, no matter what state you're in, no matter what industry you're in, 87% of your market will work with you when you are doing big, good, yummy things in the world. And that's what we're doing at the Real Agents of Change and at Solveres. And I just want to say Jim Wooten is very humble, but he wrote a book about what we wrote a book about 16 years ago before our book, and it's a very different version of it, but it just goes to show like minds eventually come together, and that's what brings us all to this Zoom today. So thank you.
It's like a divine connection or a meeting. When I first met Bruce Davis, our VP of Insurance, we connected on so many tremendous levels, and it was not an accident. We know that God actually led us together. It's a great story. It was actually through Marissa's sister, and should not have happened. I mean, it's a fluke that Bruce is even involved, but Marissa just had the courage at this dinner to talk to Bruce about Solveres, and here he is now, a really important part. So thank you, Marissa. All right, everybody, I'm going to say thank you. Thank you to everybody, and especially Dusty. And Saturday, we're going to have a great training. Again, it's fun. We love people. We just want to make a difference. And so give us 30 minutes on Saturday. I think you'll walk away from there thinking, I'm going to do this. There's really something here for me with Solveres. So anyway, good night, everybody, and thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Mark, this is Sudhir. You there?
Yeah, what's going on, Sudhir?
Yeah. Actually, you know, I just need his appointment for a quick call with VR tennis.
Yes.
So I just need his. Yeah, when he can be free, like this week.